It began with smoke and iron. Factories replaced workshops. Slums bred disease. Children worked while the rich counted profits. One system promised freedom and innovation. Another promised equality and security. But here's the paradox. Neither system worked perfectly, not once, not anywhere. Yet both became blueprints for entire nations. Welcome to Fiscal Historian. Most textbooks will tell you capitalism rewards effort and innovation. Socialism protects the weak and guarantees fairness. That's convenient. And also misleading. Because what people rarely see is that these were not moral experiments, they were structural experiments. They tested human behavior under constraints, resource allocation under pressure, and the adaptability of societies when systems collided with reality. This is where the story gets interesting. To understand why, we need to rewind to the late 18th century. Britain was industrializing at an unprecedented pace. Steam engines hissed in factories. Coal mines yawned underground. Iron rails crisscrossed the landscape. The world's first modern cities swelled with laborers drawn from the countryside. Wealth was concentrated. Inequality soared. The market emerged as the mechanism to coordinate this chaos. Prices allocated resources, capital sought profit, and labor responded to incentives. This was capitalism in its raw form. It solved a structural problem: how to mobilize labor, investment, and technology efficiently in a society where survival alone was no longer the constraint. It produced incredible growth, innovation, and industrial power, but it also created crises, some spectacularly visible, others subtle and insidious. Urban overcrowding, child labor, environmental degradation, these were not accidents, but side effects of structural logic. Then came socialism. Mid-19th century Europe, the age of factories and exploitation. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels observed the misery, the inequality, the instability. They codified a framework: central control of production, elimination of private ownership, and redistribution of resources to align output with social objectives. It solved a different structural problem: legitimacy. Capitalism created wealth, yes, but it also risked social unrest, political instability, and systemic inequity. Socialism offered a solution, at least in theory: control the system, mitigate inequality, stabilize society. Here's where the narrative gets complicated. The Russian Revolution of 1917 wasn't an ideological flourish. It was a systemic response to an industrial, pre-revolutionary society in crisis. Lenin implemented central planning to solve immediate, tangible problems: famine risk, industrial coordination, and political survival. Private markets disappeared. Quotas replaced market signals. The system was about function, not purity. And for a time, it worked. Rapid industrialization, centralized mobilization, military capacity, all achieved under immense pressure. Meanwhile, capitalist economies faced their own tests. The 1929 Great Depression was not a moral failure. It was the structural logic of unregulated markets colliding with global interdependence. Unemployment soared, banks collapsed, trade froze, the market's invisible hand stumbled. Governments responded with regulatory intervention, public works, social programs, the New Deal. Here, adaptability replaced ideology. The lesson was clear: survival depended on tuning incentives, not preaching principles. World War II became the ultimate stress test for both systems. Capitalism mobilized through technological innovation, industrial output, and reconstruction aid. Socialism mobilized through centralized planning, quotas, and enforced labor discipline. Both demonstrated capacity, but also limits. Capitalism could innovate but could fail socially. Socialism could mobilize but stagnate creatively. This is where the twist enters. What most people miss is that the contest between capitalism and socialism was never ideological purity versus purity. It was a contest of adaptability under constraints. Systems are instruments, not dogmas. Rigid socialism faltered where planning ignored incentives. Flexible capitalism thrived where regulation corrected structural weaknesses. Adaptability, not ideology, determined success. By the post-war period, hybrid approaches began to emerge. Scandinavia combined markets with welfare protections, high taxation, and regulatory oversight. China, after 1978, blended central planning with private enterprise, creating a state-directed capitalism. The lesson is subtle. Structural design matters more than ideology slogans. Economic systems are instruments to manage behavior, allocate resources, and stabilize societies under pressure. Let's visualize this. Imagine capitalism as a fast river. It flows quickly, generates power, but can flood. Socialism is a dam. It channels water, prevents extremes, but can stagnate. Pure systems are rare. Most functioning societies blend channels and rivers. They experiment, adjust, and adapt. Human history is full of these adjustments, sometimes invisible, sometimes brutal. Here's a paradox that rarely appears in economics texts. Soviet-style socialism achieved remarkable industrial feats and military power, yet it struggled to deliver consumer goods, innovation, or personal choice. Western capitalism produced rising living standards and technological leadership, but only after systemic crises forced governments to intervene. The point is not to moralize, it is to recognize that economic outcomes are consequences of design, behavior, and adaptability. Inequality, regulation, and intervention are functional, not accidental. Even today, these dynamics persist. China operates a hybrid system. Market incentives exist under a strong state apparatus. Scandinavia operates market-driven economies tempered with social safeguards. Global finance amplifies capitalism's incentive structures, exposing systemic risk at every turn. Policy experimentation continues, negotiating trade-offs between innovation, inequality, and social stability. Every modern system is a laboratory, adjusting mechanisms in real time. And yet most people think capitalism is inherently efficient, socialism inherently fair. Not true. The structural reality is far more interesting and far more consequential. Success is rarely ideological. It is operational. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Economic systems are not moral scripts. They are instruments. They are tools for managing human behavior, resource scarcity, and systemic stability. Inefficiency, inequality, and regulation are not bugs. They are features. The real determinant of survival is adaptability, the ability to adjust incentives, coordinate production, and respond to unexpected stress. History has a way of revealing itself brutally. Systems that ignore constraints fail. Systems that adapt survive. And societies that misunderstand their instruments are doomed to repeat inefficiency and crisis. Now, let's connect this to the 21st century. Artificial intelligence, climate change, global debt. These are new stress tests. Economic instruments must adapt, not ideology. Markets, state planning, hybrid solutions, all are being rewritten in real time. And the fundamental lesson from 250 years of capitalism-socialism contest remains. Adaptability, not doctrine, governs survival. Human behavior, incentives, and institutional design dictate outcomes far more than ideology ever could. So next time you hear a debate about capitalism versus socialism, remember, the contest is less about right or wrong. It is about instruments, pressures, and adaptation under constraints. History shows us the systems that survive are those that adjust to reality. The rest are footnotes. If this changed the way you see history, hit subscribe, because the real lessons of economic history are not ideological, they are structural. They show us how human societies manage scarcity, risk, and survival. And perhaps, if we pay attention, they tell us how to navigate the crises yet to come.